ADHD can be a real challenge when it comes to running a business. But in this video, I answer a question from the audience and I'm going to share with you what works for me and how you can make it work for you too. So hey there, my name's Jimmy Mitchell and I have ADHD. If you're like me, then you know that running a business while dealing with ADHD can be really tough. But in this video, I'm going to show you what's worked for me and how you can make it work for you too. So stick around because this is one video you don't want to miss. Alex from Balcatta in Western Australia asked, you mentioned in another episode that you have ADHD, which I do. And I'd like to learn more about how you run a business and manage it without medication, as I've been really struggling to get the job done lately without leaving things to the last minute. Any tips? So yes, actually I have a lot. So I will give everyone a bit of context. Yes, I do have ADHD. I was diagnosed with ADHD as an adult though, not as a child. So I was in the Navy. The Navy told me I should go see a psychiatrist, got diagnosed and been given medication. I took medication for a while. It wasn't really for me. So I tried to learn as many ways as I could to manage it without it. Now I just have the ADHD medication as a last resort if I really am getting stuck and need to get stuff done. Now, two things here I want to qualify. ADHD, depending on how you look at it, is not a bad thing. It's a bad thing if you let it control you and you let it take advantage of you effectively. But like any other neurotypical situation, there is advantages to having it. And one of the key advantages to having ADHD is thinking laterally and thinking outside of the box, which makes you amazing at working in businesses, because a lot of situations are dynamic in nature and you really need to be on top of your game when it comes to thinking fast and thinking quick and making decisions quick, which ADHD really allows you to do. So I want to qualify that. And secondly, I want to qualify that if medication works for you, I'm not telling people not to take medication. The problem I see with medication is that it's super addictive. It works so well if you have ADHD that it becomes like an addiction like anything else. And I just wanted to make sure that it was a super effective when I needed it. So I wanted to get to a point where I can manage it on my own and then use the medication if I really got stuck and needed like help, basically. And that's sort of the middle ground I've gotten to now. So let's talk about ways to manage ADHD. So I'm just going to talk about the ways I do it because having so many staff, you've got to really be on top of your game and you've got to make sure that the team can rely on you, which is the biggest problem with ADHD, is you become unreliable to others, especially if you can't manage it. So let's talk about one of the biggest problems with ADHD and one of the biggest negatives, and that's procrastination. We're going to talk about procrastination because it's probably the biggest hurdle most business owners face that have ADHD. And basically the way I go about managing ADHD is quite simple. I feel like sometimes keeping this kind of stuff simple is the best way to go about it. So there's one thing about ADHD that makes it different to someone that doesn't have ADHD, and that is the start of a project. So basically everything you do in business is a series of small projects, and some are smaller and some are bigger. So the big projects are the ones that people with ADHD really struggle with. And the reason for that is, like, if you have a neurotypical brain, just like a normal brain, basically you look at a project from the start to the finish and it's just a linear line a lot of the time, maybe little bumps along the way, but it's basically just a linear line like that. People with ADHD, it's a lot different. So like the start of the project is like that, and then it's a kind of a linear line, a flatter line across the top. So once it's very, very difficult, almost insurmountable to get started. But once you're started, it's like a straight line like this. And generally what happens is, through sheer desperation, fight or flight reflex, people with ADHD leave it till the very last minute because there's a fight or flight response. Oh, I've got to do this or I'm going to lose my job. And that forces them to push through that wall. And once they're into it, they're fine. So basically how I manage that is twofold. Firstly, I take projects, even though it sounds silly, I take projects and I break it down into micro steps, especially at the very start. Don't do it towards the end, but at the very start. Let's say, for instance, my job was to take out the rubbish. Let's use that as an example. I will break that down into tasks. So set a time to do this. I will break it down into walking to the bin, taking the lid off, picking the bag up, opening the door, walking out to the bin, putting it in the bin. That's how granular you have to get at the very start of a project when you've got ADHD. So how this looks like for me, right? Let's say we're starting a new website project and I've got a design, come up with a design. Oh, right. Open up Behance, look for designs, take designs, put them in this folder. I will get that granular with that like the set of tasks, because the idea is you want to make that wall, that big insurmountable wall at the very start, shorter and smaller. So the way you do that is by just making little, so the wall is always going to be there, that big gaping wall. The way you manage it is by just like making them little incremental steps, and eventually get to the top of the wall and you push through. Then there's a whole nother beast about finishing the task that you set out. And the way I handle that, which is another part of ADHD, is just not finishing what you start. And the way I do that is I have a team that helps as well. So when I'm moving on and moving around, I've got a team that helps. So I do the bits that will get it off the ground and the team will execute on it. That's one way. But let's say if it's a project I need to do start to finish, what I generally do is I actually set time constraints to myself artificially. And this takes training. You've got to train your mind to do this. But effectively what I do is I have my calendar and I time block it out. So for instance, right, let's say that website project we're talking about, going on Behance and looking for inspiration, right, might be one thing I need to get done. So I will set an artificial time constraint for that. I will set it like 15 minutes. I normally work in 30-minute blocks, but when you're starting, I would work in 15-minute blocks. Set an artificial time constraint, 15 minutes, and go, I'm going to put that in the calendar for 15 minutes and no more. If I don't get it done in that 15 minutes, I'll have to do it another time because I've already allocated new things to the timing. So you put that in there, and then what you do is you just work like a madman in that 15 minutes. And the first couple of times, the first 10, 20 times you do this, you're just not going to have the intensity. But as you realize that you have a system that doesn't allow you just to like creep out times, you start to work faster and faster. And eventually you get to the point where every time you're working on something, you work like a madman. And what that's allowed me to do is do 8 hours of work in like 5 hours of work a day. So I only work from 6:30 to 1 o'clock in the afternoon and go to the gym. That wouldn't be possible if I hadn't learned that by doing ADHD and learned time blocking and learned how to create artificial constraints, because what you're trying to do is create that flight or fight response that you get when something's not being done. So when you see you got 5 minutes left on the clock and you've been procrastinating for 10 minutes, you go, oh crap, I've got to get moving on this, and you get a whole bunch of stuff done. So it's not eliminating the fact that you're going to procrastinate, because you will procrastinate if you got ADHD. It's about going, how do I create that sensation of needing to get it done straight away without it being at the last minute. And the procrastination thing, the best way to handle procrastination is to identify when you're doing it. So generally you'll need to work on this as well, but basically what you'll need to do, what I've done, is I sit down when I feel like I'm procrastinating. I sit down and try and identify what that is, and generally I'll go and meditate. So meditating helps a lot with ADHD. So sitting down, put a meditation app on and sitting down and not moving for 5 minutes helps you clear your mind, because there's no external stimulus except what you're listening to. So that helps a lot. So like if I feel like I'm procrastinating, I'll get up and go for a walk and then come back, or I'll go and meditate, or go and do something to try and recenter myself back on the task at hand. Because generally procrastination happens at the very start because you're trying to avoid that massive wall instead of taking on the little task. And honestly, one of the secrets is if you have no time to procrastinate because you've time blocked your whole day to the minute, generally you won't procrastinate because you just don't have time. So that has helped a lot with me. If you guys would like a video series on ADHD in business, let me know, because it's something I'm very passionate about, and I'm living it right now. People rely on me to do what I need to do as much as yourself, and you need to make sure that they can lean on you, and you can make sure you become the goalkeeper and get the job done. So Alex, thank you so much for that question.